Here's a fight that could reshape how America gets connected to high-speed internet, and it's getting messy. SpaceX just threw down the gauntlet against Louisiana, claiming the state is about to waste hundreds of millions in taxpayer dollars on what Elon Musk's company calls an outdated approach to rural broadband. But here's where it gets controversial. This isn't just about technology. It's about who gets to control the future of internet access in America. Following its recent challenge in Virginia, SpaceX has now set its sights on Louisiana's broadband funding strategy, and the numbers they're throwing around are staggering. The company is essentially accusing Louisiana of choosing the expensive route when a cheaper, faster solution was supposedly sitting right in front of them. So what exactly happened? Louisiana received its share of the massive federal Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, that's BEAD for short, which represents a historic $42.5 billion investment designed to bring high-speed internet to underserved communities across the United States. Think of it as the government's attempt to finally close the digital divide that has left millions of Americans without reliable internet access. Louisiana's plan involves connecting over 127,000 locations that currently lack adequate broadband service. Here's where the drama unfolds. The state decided to allocate the vast majority of its funding, over $400 million, toward traditional fiber optic cable installations. Meanwhile, SpaceX's Starlink satellite internet service was awarded a relatively modest $7.7 million to serve just 10,327 locations, working out to about $750 per location. But here's the part most people miss. SpaceX claims they could have served virtually every single one of those 127,000 plus locations for less than $100 million total. If true, that would represent potential savings of over $300 million in taxpayer money. In a strongly worded letter submitted to Louisiana's Office of Broadband Development and Connectivity on Friday, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, SpaceX didn't mince words. The company described Louisiana's approach as including over $400 million in wasteful and unnecessary taxpayer spending, pointing out that the state chose fiber connections at an average cost of $4,449 per location, instead of their proposed satellite solution. The controversy deepens when you consider the federal rule changes that happened just this past June. The Commerce Department overhauled the BEAD program to emphasize technology neutrality, essentially meaning states shouldn't automatically favor one type of internet technology over another. These new rules also supposedly require states to award grants based on the lowest cost to the program. SpaceX argues Louisiana completely ignored both principles. What makes this particularly contentious is SpaceX's claim that Louisiana didn't even bother having a single technical discussion with them about their proposal. Instead, the company alleges that a legion of FIGO lobbyists and other hangers-on influenced the decision-making process, with these groups seeking to personally benefit from massive taxpayer spending. Those are fighting words in the world of government contracting. This isn't SpaceX's first rodeo with state broadband protests. The company recently challenged Virginia's similar approach, where Starlink received only $3.2 million out of Virginia's massive $613 million broadband fund. Nearly $500 million of Virginia's allocation went to fiber installations, which can deliver those coveted gigabit speeds that have become the gold standard for high-speed internet. Interestingly, SpaceX's Louisiana complaint letter spans just 2 pages, making it considerably more concise than their 7-page Virginia protest. However, both letters share the same fundamental demand: give Starlink a much larger role in each state's broadband expansion plans. Louisiana officials haven't immediately responded to requests for comment about SpaceX's accusations. However, state documents reveal their reasoning behind the funding allocation. Louisiana maintains that their BEAD proposal was carefully designed to minimize costs, maximize results, and prioritize projects that can be easily scaled with the necessary capacity to support real-time emerging needs and long-term demands. The state also considered several technical factors when selecting internet service providers, including spectrum availability, how tree canopy coverage might impact service quality, customer density in different areas, and potential future demand for bandwidth. These considerations suggest Louisiana's decision wasn't made arbitrarily, despite SpaceX's claims. But here's where the real debate lies, and this is the part that could spark some serious disagreement. Is SpaceX genuinely offering a better deal for taxpayers, or are they simply trying to grab a bigger slice of the federal funding pie? SpaceX argues that Starlink can be deployed immediately at lower upfront costs, which sounds appealing on the surface. However, critics have raised serious concerns about the company's long-term strategy. They argue that SpaceX is essentially trying to divert BEAD subsidies away from fiber installations that can provide faster gigabit speeds and potentially cost users less over time than Starlink's current $120 monthly subscription fee. Gigi Sohn, who was formerly nominated to serve as an FCC commissioner during the Biden administration, didn't hold back when responding to SpaceX's Virginia protest. She suggested that SpaceX's legal challenges might be more about saber-rattling and frightening other states into granting the company more locations, even if they can't provide priority broadband service. This criticism touches on a fundamental technical limitation that satellite internet skeptics love to highlight. While Starlink has proven exceptional at providing broadband access in rural and remote areas where running fiber cables would be prohibitively expensive, it generally delivers slower speeds compared to fiber, typically ranging from 100 megabits per second to 200 megabits per second in the United States. Additionally, the satellite internet system is already experiencing network congestion issues as more users sign up for the service. However, SpaceX isn't standing still on the technology front. The company is actively working to upgrade Starlink's capacity and is developing new equipment capable of gigabit speeds. These improvements are pending FCC approval and depend on the successful development of SpaceX's massive Starship vehicle, which would allow them to deploy much larger and more capable satellites. The Commerce Department has remained notably silent on SpaceX's protests so far. However, the outcome of this dispute won't be determined by public relations battles or strongly worded letters. Louisiana's BEAD proposal must ultimately receive approval from the National Telecommunications and Information Administration before any funding can be distributed to internet service providers. Under the current BEAD program structure, SpaceX's obligations are actually quite limited compared to traditional fiber providers. The company would only be required to provide a free Starlink dish to users in underserved areas and reserve network capacity for those customers. Meanwhile, recent changes to the BEAD program have also eliminated states' ability to set pricing requirements for internet plans designed to serve low-income users, potentially giving companies like SpaceX more pricing flexibility. So here's the question that could determine the future of rural internet access. Should states prioritize the lowest upfront cost to taxpayers, even if it means potentially slower internet speeds and higher monthly costs for users? Or should they invest more heavily in fiber infrastructure that costs more initially, but could provide faster, more reliable service for decades to come? And this is where it gets really controversial. Some industry observers argue that this entire debate represents a fundamental clash between two very different visions of America's digital future. One vision sees satellite internet as a quick, cost-effective solution that can rapidly connect underserved communities. The other envisions a comprehensive fiber network that could support future technological demands we haven't even imagined yet. What do you think? Is SpaceX right that Louisiana is wasting taxpayer money on an unnecessarily expensive fiber build-out? Or are state officials justified in prioritizing long-term infrastructure that could serve communities for generations? Should the federal government step in and force states to choose the lowest cost option, even if that means potentially compromising on speed and reliability? The answers to these questions could shape how millions of Americans access the internet for years to come. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on which approach makes more sense.